How would you feel about a law that requires people over the age of 70 to pass a specialized driving test in order to continue driving? Sorry if this ends up being long, but it's angered me for quite some time. About 10 years ago my mother at age 69 had a massive stroke. They didn't expect her to live, let alone come out of it mostly alright. Which she did except for some vision loss in her left eye. Not total, just peripheral. So she can only see perfectly straight out of that eye. So after about a year recovering from the stroke and the ensuing infection from the surgery that ended up being worse than the stroke itself, she decides she wants to go get tested to see if she can retain her driver's license, required by law in my province of Canada. My father was not well either as he had a long-term terminal illness, so I pack them both up in my truck and take them to the DMV. Me and my father happily assuming there is no f-king way in hell she will pass. Aside from her vision issues, the amazingly quick-witted and swift woman I grew up with was very unsure of herself at all times and took forever to make the smallest decisions. It broke my heart, and it didn't even occur to me to be scared that she would get her license back. Well, she did, passed with flying colors, the DMV guy said. As a SAR search and rescue tech, the idea of taking him up in the helicopter and throwing him out without a rope occurred to me. 1 week later, accident number 1. T-boned a poor lady as she was coming out of the grocery store. Not much damage, and no injuries thankfully. Mother still refused to admit she wasn't fit to drive. Month later, accident 2. She panics on a multi-lane cross-city road and ends up on the raised median and rips the entire exhaust system off her car. Still won't admit any issues. At this point I'm amazed I didn't have ulcers. Shortly after accident 2 my father passed away. I did everything up to and including begging to get her to give up the license. She wouldn't do it, and for the next few months I spent every day with a knot in my stomach until I spoke to her around 6 PM every night once she was home from running around. Then around 1 PM I get a call from her cell phone. This phone I bought her that she mostly ignored, except to charge it. I couldn't understand a word she said. She was so upset on the phone. I managed to get her general location out of her and hopped in a car and more than exceeded the speed limit getting down there. Upon arriving there are 2 ambulances, shoes in front of her car and it's up on the curb. She's sitting on the curb next to it bawling her eyes out, and I'm terrified she's killed someone. Turns out a man and his son were walking out of the soccer pitch next to the road, began to cross on the crosswalk, and she didn't see them. She thankfully only struck the father, and aside from being beamed up he wasn't super seriously injured. Because of my job I knew most of the police officers in the city, so one of them offered to follow me back to her house so she could take me back down to get her car. By the time I had done so and got back to her condo she had stopped crying, threw me the extra set of keys to the car she had, and told me to get rid of the car. She even tried to get the DMV worker that passed her fired after that. She immediately realized she shouldn't have ever gotten it back. She was actually terrified that she had been driving like that. Years later she still comments about how she never even saw the man and his son, and how she could have killed one or both of them. I have all
Here
the
in Illinois,
respect
my
in the world
grandpa
for
had to
seniors.
do it every year.
My mother
after
was one of the
75.
first women CEOs in this province.
That's a great
and was a
idea.
Hellcat and I'm
Hyundai.
going to call
I'll
my
learn a lot from her.
68-year-old
God,
guy
also learn to
and
accept
ask him to support
limitations.
such legislation.
If you are older reading
Edit.
this post,
Most driving
if you
laws
think
are
for
passed
even
by
a
state
second
legislators
that you could maybe
who
not
usually
be
do
the
drive
safest
themselves to be on the road.
I'm
Talk
all
to
for
and listen to
testing
your loved
people.
ones.
However,
it's
I'm
horrible
not
to give
sure
up
what
that
you mean
freedom.
by
It would be more horrible
The
for you to
requirements
kill
for
some
good
driving
driving.
person
Don't
because
change
you
with
are
age.
too proud to
So
give
it
it
should
up.
be the same
Edit.
test.
Thanks for the gold mysterious
ID
stranger.
Ranger.
We'd all be retested every 10 years or so until we hit 60. Then we are retested every 5 years. However, older folks are a huge voting bloc and it's unlikely this would ever pass. I send patients for driver's evaluations if their ability to navigate through my office is concerningly questionable. Unaware drivers are just as dangerous as impaired drivers. Let me say this about that. The neighbor I love is 93 and still driving. When she's up to it, she can barely see the on-off switch on her vacuum cleaner. Should she be driving? I want her to maintain independence, but at the same time, I don't think it's safe for her or others. Yet the DMV doesn't require her to take a vision exam or a competency test. Ugh, please. My grandma is practically blind and went to take her driving vision test to renew her license. She failed, but the lady at the DMV felt bad, so she had her take it again and gave her hints so she could pass it. So now my practically blind grandma is out on the road still. It's for their safety as much as anyone else's. I'm so mad that the lady at the DMV was so irresponsible as to let her keep driving. All for it. When I was 14, my friend was coming to my house and he got killed by my next door neighbor who happened to be elderly. My friend was on his skateboard and he was just up the street from my house. From the position of his body and where elderly guy stopped his car, I could see he made a super sharp left turn that killed him and ran over my other friend. The other friend survived and recovered from his injuries, but my other friend not so lucky. Oh, and my granddad has Alzheimer's and frequently forgets where he is, and I think he still has his license, though my grandma finally took his keys. I'm an eye doc and I'd be all for it. You know how often I get berated or threatened by geriatrics when I strongly suggest that they quit driving because they no longer meet the legal requirements for driving. People should have to retake the driver's test every 10 years if not 20. I've seen too many terrible drivers of all ages. Can we make everyone take it? Seriously, I see more horrible drivers in the commuting age bracket than in the retired age bracket.